Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org,
Hello everyone, this is Joe from Seattle from JoeFromSeattle.org.
author of I, the Dragon, Cool and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lord Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon.
Hell yeah, pre-order today, GameStop, get a free Seinfeld box set.
So, Nintendo has released their financial reports today, and I had a good look-see at, some of the titles sold. I actually have quite a bit to say about a lot of this.
Bro, open your eyes. How did you read the financial report if you don't open your eyes? This dude's been getting progressively squintier over time. It's just weird.
This is really interesting stuff, but the one thing that really stuck out to me, and the one thing I really, really wanted to drive home immediately, is that my prediction 100% came true.
I mean, you make 10 million videos a week predicting 10 million different things. You were going to get something right eventually.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet quite handedly outsold Elden Ring. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold 20 million units. Elden Ring has only sold 18 million after an 8-month head start.
Well, little awkward now since Elden Ring has officially passed 20 million, but this also isn't surprising. Elden Ring is a brand new IP with an M rating, while Pokemon is, Pokemon. The fact they were neck and neck in sales in the first place is a massive testament to Elden Ring's success, not its failure.
Scarlet and Violet didn't come out until November. So, in short, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, was a better selling game. It sold faster. It was a much bigger release than Elden Ring.
Again, not shocking. Frozen 2 made 1.4 billion basically just by being called Frozen. But can you tell me a single thing that happened in Frozen 2? No, of course not, because nobody remembers it. Money generated doesn't equal quality or memorability, and I long for the days when people don't get this backwards anymore.
And the reason I bring this up, the reason I was so angry at Elden Ring, and one of the reasons I made a name for myself, kind of condemning what Elden Ring fans were saying about this release.
That's not how you made a name for yourself, bro. Before literally just now, I didn't know you had ever talked about this.
There was a really big push, among the community to present Elden Ring as the best-selling new IP of all time, the best-selling game of the year, even though it came out in March.
Yeah, guys, if a game comes out in March, it can't possibly be the best-selling game of the year. That's against the Geneva Convention or something.
And I think, what was the third one? Best-selling game? One of the best-selling games ever made, right? There was a very big, coordinated, agenda from, these big, Elden Ring fanboy channels to, paint this as, one of the biggest success stories in gaming.
I mean, it was a brand new IP with an M rating and a hefty learning curve that managed to sell 20 million copies. That's not a narrative. That's just a really impressive accomplishment.
The game that, made Nintendo tremble and delay, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. This was supposed to be the biggest release ever.
Was it? I thought it was just supposed to be a good game. You're doing that thing where you try to create roadblocks for yourself to overcome when literally no one has heard of those roadblocks before. Also, did you just say Breath of the Wild 2? You realize the game has a title. It's had a title for a while now.
And, flash in the pan success, Sword and Shield sold 25 million units, Scarlet and Violet sold 20, Legends Arceus sold 15,
So Pokemon sales are going down while a new IP like Elden Ring is outdoing them. Cool, thanks for that ammo. I'll use that later.
I think Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the remakes, I think that outsold Elden Ring too. I'll have to check it. I'll have to look at that.
It didn't. Again, sales don't dictate quality or impact, because if they did, FIFA and Madden would be god-tier games, but just for the sake of your own stupid argument, no, these two Pokemon remakes did not outsell Elden Ring.
The reality is, there are so many, bigger Nintendo franchises than Souls, honestly.
That's cool. And, you can keep thinking about that if you want. The rest of us are just gonna be playing games, but, you do you.
Elden Ring only did as well as it did because of, the open world thing, the hype from fanboys, and, maybe the involvement of George R.R. Martin.
Did you just imply open world games generate hype easily? Because Saints Row would like a word. And so would Forspoken. And pretty much every recent Ubisoft game.
That's it. Most people, I think, kind of tuned out of, Elden Ring pretty quickly after it came out.
I mean, it's still number 20 on Steam charts. And if you go to pretty much any forum or user review site on the entire internet, you'll find a decent number of people saying that this was the game that got them into Souls games, or that they found this game to be more, welcoming than other Souls games in terms of the learning curve. So it's kind of hard to say that this was all done by the established Souls hype, Also, the only thing I ever hear about George R.R. Martin is that he's a complete douche nugget, so I don't know if his name being attached was really the golden ticket.
It's not all that good of a game. I have no interest in checking it out. Like, I have, like, no expectations for it, like, that it will be particularly well remembered.
Yeah, all right. Not like this insanely successful game was extremely innovative or unique or anything like that. That combination of traits, along with its lasting appeal and success, surely won't keep it relevant. Also, fun fact, the game recently crossed 20 million units. Like, that happened pretty recently. But 13.4 million of those were in the first month. So that means 7 million more people bought this game in the last 10 months. Which is fucking bananas. Most games are lucky to hit 7 million units sold in their entire lifetime, and Elden Ring is out here dropping 7 million after the initial 13 million from launch. If that doesn't say something about its lasting appeal, I don't know what does. And before you say, oh, Joe, you just said sales don't equal quality, and I stand by that, but if a game is selling 13 million at launch, and then 7 million across the next 10 months, that means something about it is sticking with people. Sales are not an indication of quality, but they can be an indication of lasting appeal, and that means something.
We're in 2023 now, and, once it got its Game of the Year award, it stopped being talked about.
Again, tell that to the 50,000 people still playing it right now on a Friday afternoon, and that's just on Steam.
It is this year's It Takes Two. The game just cannot compete with superior franchises like Pokemon, at 20 million units sold.
20 million like Elden Ring?
Like Super Mario Odyssey at 25 million units sold.
Okay, an extra 5 million is a lot, but like at that point you've already made it, 20 million units is nothing, but 25 million units now, that's something. Like if you manage to sell more than 5 million units total, that's a massive accomplishment on its own. People really need to have some perspective here. Most games that come out do not cross 5 million total ever. So I don't think pinching hairs after 20 million is really all that fair.
Like Animal Crossing New Horizons at 40 million units sold. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 50 million units sold.
More people have watched The Big Bang Theory than Daredevil. Therefore, The Big Bang Theory is better than Daredevil. Like, by your logic, that's how this works. Also, watch Daredevil if you haven't. You fucking idiot. Watch it.
These games are going to, keep selling for years. Whilst Elden Ring is kind of, relegated to, only selling when it hits, $10 on Steam or whatever.
Which literally hasn't happened yet. Also, if you think the fucking Diamond and Pearl remakes are going to have the same kind of longevity as Animal Crossing and Mario Kart, you're snorting Dorito dust. That's just not going to happen.
Which, the company will then use to, inflate their sales numbers.
If copies of a game are sold and it's reported, that's not inflating the numbers. That's just the numbers. That's why companies make the distinction between revenue generated and copies sold.
Again, it's interesting to see this because I knew it would happen. I told people it would happen, and no one believed me.
Yeah, we still don't.
I was laughed at. There were so many salty Elden Ring fanboys making these weird commentary videos about how I didn't appreciate Elden Ring and how I was a casual and how I was just a Nintendo fanboy.
Because you are.
Well, guess what? Pokemon Scarlet and Violet didn't even make my top 10 best games of last year.
Well, yeah, I'd fucking hope it didn't.
I still loved it. It was still great. But 2022 was so loaded with great Nintendo Switch releases. I did not put Legends Arceus, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on the list.
I mean, okay. But if anything, doesn't this just prove that sales don't equal quality? Like you've been going on and on about how Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but you didn't even think they were that good?
Legends Arceus was actually my number one pick, my game of the year. And, Legends Arceus, way better game than Elden Ring.
I really feel like you're pronouncing it wrong. I'm basing that off nothing at all. I've literally never heard the title of that game spoken out loud, but if that's actually how you pronounce it, that's It's kind of a dumb name.
It'll be way more fondly remembered. People will look back on it as like, I think, the best Pokemon game in recent years. Like, a true step forward to the franchise.
I mean, as a fan of Pokemon Coliseum back in the day, I was actually really interested in Pokemon. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Pokemon Arby's. It was an interesting shift in the formula, and I think it had some good ideas. But to act like Pokemon Arby's was a perfect game or Game of the Year material when it had such obvious glaring issues, I think says more about you than anything else. Like, yeah, to each their own, but to say it was Game of the Year over Elden Ring is kind of just like, I don't know. What's the past tense of wishful thinking? Because that's kind of what this is.
Scarlet and Violet was good as well, but
Whoop, there goes your legitimacy as a critic. Out the window, goodbye.
Legends Arceus, I think, really has the potential to really like be the Pokemon game for older fans. Even now I kind of find myself going back to it and like just marveling at just how good that game actually was.
Yeah, Arby's had some good ideas. I may emulate it in the future and give it a deeper dive. I would really love to see the Pokemon series taking more progressive and, evolving steps like that in the future instead of just treading water for like the 12th game in a row. Arby's had some really good ideas. I just wish the fucking Pokemon devs put more effort into things like that. If anything, the good ideas of Pokemon Arby's made Scarlet and Violet worse.
It's a phenomenal experience. Like one of the best RPG experiences I've had in a long time. And meanwhile, like people are still trying to convince me that like Elden Ring was ever good.
Yeah, how could anyone say that? How could anyone say Elden Ring was good when Arby's was right there? Elden Ring will never compare to Arby's. Is the joke old yet? The Arby's joke, is it old? Because I'm not cutting it if it is. I really don't care.
Dark Souls 3 wasn't good. Dark Souls 2 wasn't good. Dark Souls 1 wasn't good. Like, I've played so many Souls games at this point. Like, I have no real interest. Sekiro wasn't good.
Okay, it sounds to me like you just don't like Souls games, which is fine, I guess. They weren't really my cup of tea either until, like, last year. But even if a game isn't my cup of tea, I can at least recognize its quality. Like, I'm honestly not a huge fan of the Elder Scrolls series, but I can recognize that that's more of a me thing rather than an issue with the games themselves, Like, Bethesda RPGs just aren't really my thing. Maybe they will be in the future, the same way that, I wasn't really into Souls games, and now I fucking love Souls games. That's a very recent development. But if you can recognize that a game isn't your thing, you should probably have the self-awareness to also recognize that you're not the best objective critic of it. Like, I'm not a fan of Bethesda RPGs, so I would never come out and say Fallout fucking sucks because that wouldn't be fair. I'm not a good critic of Fallout. Compare that to, like, I don't know, survival horror games, which are my thing, so I can confidently say, like, Layers of Fear or The Evil Within. As a fan of survival horror games, I can confidently say that those games are complete fucking ass. In Before Evil Within is good. No, it's not. Shut up and play RE4 like an adult.
I've played so many of these like Souls-like games at this point that I have no real interest in like ever checking out Elden Ring.
If you don't like Souls games, why do you keep playing them? Like, I guess on one hand, kudos for trying games you're usually not into, but if you already have your mind made up going into the game, why try it at all? Assuming you've actually tried Dark Souls at any point, which I'm not convinced you actually have since it's not on the Switch.
There's really nothing you can do to convince me to check out Elden Ring at this point.
Alright, so opinion discarded.
Like, it's a forgotten game. It is this year's Dragon Quest Inquisition.
What the fuck is Dragon Quest Inquisition?
It won a bunch of awards. People tried hyping it up, but at the end of the day, it will be forgotten.
Just like this channel. Once people like me stop laughing at you. Because that's really all this channel is good for at this point. So thanks for that. Just don't get it twisted. Toodles.